Elizabeth Spann Craig, welcome to the Author Biz.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you back again. You were, I think, like at episode 23 or 24. You were a guest for a very popular episode, so it's a treat to have you back again. Before we get going, for people who didn't listen to that earlier episode, could you give us a quick background on yourself?
I would be happy to. I am a hybrid writer. I write cozy mysteries, 3 different series, 2 for Penguin Random House, but I've gotten my rights back for what I can with those series. One is now strictly self-published completely. Mm-hmm. And I also share writing links on Twitter, try to share resources with other writers like you do yourself, Stephen.
Do you ever? And you also you're a prodigious blogger, which is the source of our material here today. You wrote a blog post the other day about an experiment that you did for pre-orders. And one of the things I love about your blog is that you try things that don't always work, and then you write about the results no matter what the results are.
I like to share my failures.
And successes, come on.
There's so many success stories out there, and I mean, maybe other people just always have success, and that is awesome and more power to them. But unfortunately, I do not seem to be one of those authors. I try some things and they work great. Mm-hmm. Like I'm having a lot of success doing stuff like metadata and really nerdy, boring stuff. And some things I try that are supposed to be absolutely amazing, like pre-orders, which yes. I kept hearing about, and I'm sure I've heard the same thing. Mm-hmm. Do pre-orders. This is what you need to do. Did not work so well for me.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I did share that.
Because everyone that I talk to about pre-orders, they'll say, hey, I did a pre-order for this. And I'll say, really, why? And the answer is always because everyone's doing it and it's what you're supposed to do. And, things are different for everybody, depending on what genre you write, who your audience is, where this book is in your series, even your results or your mileage, to quote a commercial, may vary. So let's sort of talk about why you decided to do pre-orders for the 9th book in the series. Is that right?
It is the 9th book in the series.
Okay.
And I did it because Mark Coker said it was a good idea.
And we'll get back to Mark Coker.
Yes, and I do agree with a lot that Mark says. Mm-hmm. I think he's a super smart guy, and I've certainly put a lot of his tips to good use before. I thought, I'm going to give this a go. There's no reason not to. It just didn't work for me. It wasn't something that worked. I loved especially what he mentioned was the ability to hyperlink that already on the market for sale mm-hmm. material in the back matter of your books. I thought, this is genius. This is genius. I'm going to do that. That's what I always want to do. And so I did. Mm-hmm. That's what I did.
And this is for a book that's not out yet, right? It's not coming out until August because you also followed Mark's advice to have a long runway for the pre-order.
Exactly. He said barest minimum of 5 days. He recommended a preferred minimum of 4 to 12 weeks. And he said the maximum and what he recommended, his most recommended tip, was a year in advance. And I didn't quite make the year. I think it's like 10 months or something like that. Very close to that. I thought, I'm going to do it. Mark said so. I'm going to do it. And I tried it. And it is just a really long pre-order period. And my readers, they are not responding to that at all.
Well, it's interesting because we all think of this kind of thing. Everything that we do with ordering and pricing and all the components of that, we think of only in terms of possible sales. But there are other components of this. I mean, you put the book up for sale maybe even before you started writing it.
Oh, the book, I don't even have a really good outline.
Okay.
No pressure. I mean, I keep thinking, Stephen, I was like, I could be hit by a train in downtown Matthews, North Carolina tomorrow. And this book, I mean, not that people are buying it, but heck, if they were buying it, what would happen then? I assumed that they would just refund everybody and tell them the author died. I don't really know.
All right. Well, let's take a step back and first talk about the way pre-orders work on the different platforms and why you chose to offer pre-orders on some platforms and not others.
Yes. Okay. Mark recommended, and I agreed with him, let's shoot for Apple and Kobo in particular. He did throw a little bone out there to Barnes and Noble, but we all know we are not selling a lot of books on Barnes and Noble.
Mm-hmm.
I did put it up there on Barnes and Noble anyway. The reasons that I specifically didn't put them on Amazon, one of them was one of Mark's reasons, which is that the sales do not accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, Amazon counts the sale towards that day and that day only. So you get a little boost in visibility for that day. But you don't get it on the release day, which is really when you want a real spike in visibility and sales ranking. And the second reason is because Amazon does not offer assetless pre-ordering. In other words, metadata only, which Smashwords and Drafted Digital do offer. In other words, you have to have a manuscript or something approximating.
Something that looks like a manuscript.
Something that looks like a manuscript. And I made a joke in the post about putting your grocery list up there. But I swear, I know people have said, I'm just throwing stuff up there so it kind of holds my place. And I can't work that way. That doesn't seem right. I'm just worried that somehow I'm going to lose my mind and not put the actual manuscript in there or put some sort of a draft in there, because it locks down 10 days before your release. Amazon says you must have the final manuscript because that's what's going live. So you have to have it ready by that time. And it's not that I can't follow a deadline. I just thought, I don't even have an outline for this book. I can't just put something randomly up there.
And things happen. It's possible that you could put a draft up there and then you get sick. And all of a sudden, a first draft is going out to people that have paid good money for the book. And that would be kind of sort of embarrassing. So, again, let's get back to the idea of things other than just revenue that are involved in making the decision to do the pre-order. There's the additional stress of having this fixed deadline that if you're indie publishing a book, we don't normally have, even if you're a hybrid author. So even your traditional publishers probably not going to come by and take a finger or something if you're a day late.
Well, the way that the traditional publishers work, at least for my publishers, for Penguin Random House, is that it was real padded. And usually we complain about that. So I would have a deadline that was usually about 9 or 10 months in advance of my release date. That just is really padding it in case the author loses her mind or something happens with the author's kids or whatever. Life happens in the meantime. So I'd turn something in, or sometimes I'd ask for an extension. A couple of times I did have something to come up and I was like, can I get a week here or there? They were already, always happy to work with me, even though it was in the contract. That was my deadline. And it was fine. But I had that's a long lead period in there for fixing things or for being really late. And obviously if you're an indie author, you just don't have that. You like to think, okay, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to have it ready that long before. But the truth is, I'm going to release it if it's ready that far in advance. I'm not going to just sit on a book. And that's another problem I have with it. If I have the book done early, let's say I do, and right now it's not looking like it's but let's say I did. I'd have to wait until the pre-order period is up and then release it. And that just goes against what I've always done as an indie author. As a trad published author, I knew that was part of the system, so I just did it. But that's not what I do now.
All right. Other than the reason that everyone's doing it and it just seemed like the right thing to do, were there other specific things that you hope to accomplish by offering the pre-order over those few platforms?
I think so. Most of it was buzz. I wanted the readers to be excited about it. Of course, I wanted them to buy it. There was also, Mark had mentioned the availability sometimes of merchandising on Apple, in which case Apple, would say, oh, these sales are going really well. Let's continue promoting this. So they sort of catch the buzz and then they put you on their coming soon or featured books page, and you get these neat merchandising opportunities to push a book so it seems like it's getting really hot, and then before your release happens. I thought, okay, that may happen. In my case, my sales have always been just very steady. It's not one of these, I don't write a genre where everybody's like, oh, I have to get that. It's not like Girl on the Train or something like that. I have my readers, they're very loyal, and my sales are going to be pretty steady except for like the first week after release when it does get very heavy sales. But So I was
Oh,
like, well, we'll see. But I've never had a lot of luck with Apple. That was another thing. It's
uh-huh.
never really been my platform to sell on.
But you do sell books on those other platforms. So we're not just saying that you sell 100% of your books on Amazon and you were trying this experiment on the other platforms, and the fact that it hasn't gone as well as you expected shouldn't be a surprise, because you could run some numbers and project what you might have hoped to sell, and I'm guessing you didn't come anywhere close to that.
Nowhere close. Nowhere close. So for me, it's a matter of, I'd say probably, I'm going to say maybe 20% of my sales
Mm-hmm.
are on non-Amazon retailers. I have a presence there. I sell well. Even my box sets sell pretty well on Apple and the other non-Amazon retailers. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just pick up at least a few sales, make it worth my while. But since January of this year, when I pulled up my drafted digital dashboard,
Uh-huh.
I was like, wow, I have zero
That's a small number.
sales. This is a really low number there. And comparing that to, my other releases, even my box sets. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the box sets, which I don't think I could even pay somebody to take them off my hands at Amazon. They sell well on these other channels,
Uh-huh.
these non-Amazon channels. I've sold like 40 of those since the start of the year for just one of my box sets, but zero for this exciting new release and this ninth in a series that my readers really like. So it's been really disappointing that way.
Uh-huh.
And in addition, it's been time consuming for me because my readers will email me very confused. My readers have been extremely confused about the pre-order. I have gotten emails saying, Elizabeth, I don't understand. I've always gotten your books on Amazon before. Are you not going through Amazon anymore?
Mm-hmm.
How will I get your books? So I've gotten several of those. I usually get about one complaint, I'd say a complaint or confused email a week. I've had emails where they say, I've been seeing this cover, but I can't find the book for sale. Is this an old book or have you recovered a book? So I've had some of those.
Yeah, and that's
And
sort of the nightmare scenario, that they've seen the cover so many times that when it finally comes out on Amazon, it's like, oh, I must have already read that one because I've seen the cover before.
Exactly. Yeah, that really troubled me too. I thought, okay, they've seen the cover for so long. It's been in the backs of books. I've had it on my website. They've seen it around. They're thinking, I know that's how sometimes I look at a book and I'm like, oh yeah, I've read that before, just looking at the cover. So again, they're so familiar with the cover that I'm worried they're thinking, I've already read this book. And if they don't subscribe to my email newsletter, then they may continue thinking that.
And did you seriously consider putting it up for pre-order on Amazon as well, or did you just exclude that from your thinking right from the start?
The only thing that I toyed with was the idea of putting it up on CreateSpace, the print format for Amazon. And the reasons for doing that would be that you can then get reviews for the book, and it will cross-populate over to the pre-order page for Amazon. So you can actually get reviews on the book. It's sort of one of these little tricks before the book releases.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling, again, that would really increase the number of confused emails that I would get. If people are reading this, clearly they're even reviewing it. Why can't I get it? I think that would be a problem. Although it would be nice to be able to offer a Goodreads giveaway or something like that. And then okay, I can get reviews. I think that would be a good method. But honestly, after I thought about how confusing that might be, I decided not to do it.
How much of the confusion do you think is because of your reader base? You write cozy mysteries, and those are typically targeted to a certain segment of readers. So how much of it do you attribute to that?
I attribute a good deal to that, honestly. I feel like, and you're right, I write cozy mysteries. I also, the particular series that we're talking about is an octogenarian sleuth. I do have a lot of octogenarians and nonagenarians who are reading my books, just self-reporting back into me.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that is definitely a little bit of confusion on their part, but I also think that I believe anyone maybe middle-aged and up is reluctant. Just general feedback that I've gotten from people I know and writers I know may be reluctant to get a pre-order. And I think the reason is immediacy. We want to buy it,
Hmm.
we want to read it right then. And it's almost a little teaser, in a way, just to see it available and you can purchase it, but you can't read it. And I think that might be frustrating for some people. I know that I never buy pre-orders for myself, but I do buy them for my kids. One
Hmm.
kid's in college, and I've got a teen daughter also who have favorite series, and I'm thinking I can't keep track of these favorite series unless I buy them now.
Hmm.
But for myself, I would never do that. So, I mean, I'm thinking, middle aged up. So maybe if you wrote YA, although Mark Coker in his new study said most of the successful pre orders were romance. So perhaps it's also a genre problem.
That's entirely possible as well. And I do want to get to what Mark Coker said, but we'll do that. I first want to talk about my experience with pre-orders as a reader, because I'm on a lot of email lists. I'm pretty sure I'm on one or two of your email lists. And in the past, I'd get these email messages from people saying, my book's available for pre-order, please go buy it. So I would go and buy it. And then as I began to learn what was actually going on with the pre-orders, I found myself reacting differently when they'd say that, thinking in my own mind, I'm actually hurting them by going out and pre-ordering the book. They would be better off if I bought it on release day. So I'd just make a little calendar entry and then go buy it on release day. I don't know what the right thing to do is, but I think so many of us as authors, we hear these things and we take it as gospel, that this is something that works for everyone. And nothing works for everyone, except maybe BookBub.
Yeah, exactly. That is so true. And I think you're right. I mean, maybe we're thinking about it very hard because we are writers and we don't want to hurt other writers. But I know this discussion has been going on for years
Mm-hmm.
because even when I was traditionally published solely, I was on those little email loops, like the Google, I guess it's Yahoo groups or something
Uh-huh.
like that with a bunch of other mystery writers. And they were already complaining about pre-orders back then because they were concerned that they would ship early to Barnes and Noble, and Barnes and Noble would put them out early, and then those sales would be counted before their release day, and it would mess up their possibilities on New York Times bestseller list
Mm-hmm.
or USA Today, whatever. And so it's never been a really popular thing with writers to do, which is why when I saw some advice saying, this is what you should try to do with the pre-orders, I thought, well, that kind of flies in the face of what I've always heard, but I'm always open to
Yes.
experiment. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Okay. Now, Mark Coker, who is the founder, I think, of Smashwords, for people who don't know who Mark is, he has been beating the pre-order drum for a while. And one of the reasons, of course, is that Smashwords was one of the early adopters for making pre-orders available to authors. So it's something that differentiated them, and now everyone offers it. But he's still beating the drum. And they just released, like last Sunday, the survey results for 2016, and they're fascinating. I'll link to them in the show notes. But one of the things that was in there was some statistics that he quoted about the success of authors who offered pre-orders versus authors who didn't. And he says that it's just under 14% of authors, Smashword authors, are offering pre-orders. So 85, 86% are not. And then he quotes some statistics to show that the people offering pre-orders are doing better than the other authors. Of course, you can use statistics to paint any picture that you want to paint. But I found that interesting, and it sort of flies in the face of all of the factual data that I've seen. Or not factual, more anecdotal. I mean, people like you that I'm talking to, when you say, why did you do it? And they say, well, because everyone's doing it. How did it go? Well, I sold a few copies, and then, most people, they're doing it just on Amazon. And then my first day I didn't get the bump, and it's just the worst of all possible worlds in doing it that way. So I think we need to take things like these statistics that Mark shares and think how they can apply to us, and follow people like you who are actually out there running experiments and talking about them, and sharing the data, which is wonderful.
Well, Thanks. And I mean, he did mention some things that we could try and that would make it work. And I did not try some of the things that he recommended. I don't do cover reveals because, I've got 20 books out there. I felt like, how many times can you get married and still wear the white dress?
Right.
I've got 3 or 4 releases usually in a year. I'm not going to just do cover reveals that many times. Everybody would get sick of me. So there are things I could have done. I could have put it on Amazon. I could have sent something out to my email newsletter group, and I didn't do that because I knew most of them shop at Amazon. I didn't want to make them mad. There are things I could have done that if you're not in the same situation, you could try them and see if it works for you. It's worth a try. Or maybe make it a shorter pre-order period. Maybe try it for, a month or, shorter than that instead of trying it for 10 months to a year.
Now, is this a definite no for you going forward?
I'm feeling like it's pretty much a definite no for cozy mysteries anyway. If I try another genre, I might give it a go, but definitely not going to try it again with my Myrtle series. That's for sure.
About 25% of our audience are people that are working on their debut novel. Would you recommend, based on your experience, that someone with a debut novel, easy for me to say, offer it as a pre-order?
I think the prevailing wisdom on that is they should consider KDP Select, which is also something else I don't do, instead of going wide with it. And I think if you do that, you may as well go ahead and try an Amazon pre-order and see how that works for you. For first book, I think that might work better. And you get the cool also bots as soon as it goes live, which it populates customers who bought such and so, also purchased such and so. So, those customers get suggestions. Hey, try this book if you like that book, which is really important. Yeah. I think it's definitely worth a try.
There are a lot of benefits that accrue to authors, especially authors that have a built-in audience, I think, at Amazon, but those are offset by some of the negatives, the biggest being that you just don't get that big 2 or 3 day bump when you send out the email to your list saying, hey, the book's available. So you do get some things like being populated in the also bots 30 days or 60 days ahead of time. But the negatives are reader confusion, like what you've experienced, and the pressure of, especially if you're a first-time author, knowing that this thing's got to be up there 10 days before this date that you committed to 60 days ago. And you get your book back from your editor, and it's like, uh-oh.
It's scary. And I don't know. I mean, because editors can get sick. Formatters can have problems. Cover designers, it doesn't always work out. So things can happen. Not only that, but I would say also it's just you've got to think about the amount of time that you're spending promoting a book that possibly you haven't even written yet, because that's the best. What they recommend is just sort of a best practice for these pre-orders is go ahead and promote it as if it were a release and do some giveaways and do some contests and go on a blog tour and build up this hype. And then you've got to say to yourself, but this book, it's not even out yet, and I need to be writing the book, and I also need to be promoting the other books that I've got. So when you're looking at how much time can I spend on this one thing, it starts to really get out of control, I think.
When you typically release a book, and let's say there were no pre-orders involved, when you typically release a book, do you have a set period of time that's a part of your process for promoting a new release? Is it like a month or 2 weeks or 3 days?
Yeah, I don't promote them. Okay. I mean, that is, that's, I think was a frustration that obviously Penguin had probably with me. I did the first couple of books I had with them, but I thought, no, I'm just going to keep on going. So, I mean, promote. Okay. I'm being a little bit facetious there. My idea of promoting a new release is to maybe put something up on Facebook. The big thing is send out an email to my newsletter list. That would be the big thing. And then just updating my website. I can't think of anything else I do. Actually, it's kind of embarrassing. I really, that's all I do. And it seems to work. And it usually takes, I would say probably 3 days to get traction. But I already have an established reader base.
Yes.
And it'd be great to get more readers. But I'm not great at promoting sometimes.
And it's really easy to get sucked down the promotional rat hole and just spend all your time for a period of time doing that, and then all of a sudden you're out of your daily routines and daily habits, and you're sitting there refreshing your screen looking for new sales, and it just seems like it could be a really tedious process, especially for new authors.
I think so, and also frustrating because it takes a while for it to get traction. And of course, they always say it's the long tail, and I think that's true. It's the performance of the book, for the author's lifetime. Really, is what it is.
All right, for people out there listening who like the kinds of things that you write, and some of them will, because I really like cozy mysteries myself, although I didn't know that they were cozy mysteries when I started reading them. But you have 2 books coming out this year, at least 2. So let's talk for a minute about those, if you would.
Yes, I have got what we've been talking about.
That's available for pre-order now on Kobo and iTunes.
Cruising for Murder, which is a Myrtle Cove release. And I also have Patch of Trouble, which is coming up. It should be released the first week of May. And that is my Southern Quilting Mysteries. This is the first time I've gone solo on that series since I got the rights back from Penguin. So a little scary.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought this was going to be another Penguin release. Okay.
It's not. This is and it's been very scary because, you don't have your editor and your whole little fall. It's funny because you would think it'd be just as easy as doing your other series, but it's not. It's a little scary. So that comes out probably the first week of May.
All right. Now, why is it, we're almost done, but I have to ask this question. Why is it different? What's different about that than doing your other series? Are you using the same editors?
I'm not well, no. And unfortunately, Penguin let go. They had, of course, a huge amount of turnaround with employees. And so my editor got laid off, which is just shocking to me. I mean, I thought she was on a she was going to be just executive level up there. She's so good. And so honestly, I thought there's no way I can afford her freelance because, she lives in Manhattan.
Right.
So I have the same editor that I use for my Myrtle Clover series, Judy Beatty, does a great job. It's just, she honestly was a collaborator with me. She collaborated. She would say, Elizabeth, your readers really love this texture because it's quilting. I'm not a quilter. I have to fake it. I read a lot about quilting. I watch a lot of YouTube videos on quilting. She really helped me and she collaborated with me and she brought up ideas, and not having that for this one series has been
a really
big adjustment.
I get you. So it's an exciting few months coming up for you.
Exactly.
All right. And where can people find out more about you and, more importantly, subscribe to your blog, which is fantastic for writers?
If you go to my website, elizabethspanncraig.com, there is a tab there for blogs, and the sign-up form is right there in the sidebar.
And you do something really clever on your blog that a lot of us don't do. A lot of writers blog about writing, which isn't really directed at your readers. You actually have 2 different email lists, one for readers and one for writers.
I do. And occasionally they accidentally go on the wrong list and ask me to take them off.
But it's a clever idea. It's a good way to segment things that way so that your readers get new release information and your writer friends are getting these wonderful writing tips that you send out and post about constantly, and your Twitterific links.
Thank you. Yes, so I think it works well. I'd recommend that to anybody. 2 separate newsletters.
All right. Thanks so much for being here again, Elizabeth. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.